The alien research vessel, Harmony's Edge, moved slowly through the dark emptiness of space. Its hull glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Captain Nira stood in front of the huge viewing screen, her forearms folded across her chest as she looked at the broken ship floating ahead of them. Nira belonged to the Volani, a peaceful race that had never seen war. Her people were explorers and scientists, always curious about the mysteries of the universe. Today, they had found something very interesting. "Captain, I am getting readings from that ship," said Science Officer Keth, his long tentacles moving gracefully over the glowing controls. "There is one life form still alive.
Right.
It seems to be sleeping in some kind of frozen state." The ship they were looking at was called New Sol. It had been floating dead in space for over 300 years. Most of its systems had failed long ago, and its engines were completely cold. But somewhere deep inside in the medical section, one sleeping pod was still working. Nira thought carefully. Her ship's computer had warned her that waking up an unknown species could be dangerous. But her curiosity was stronger than her fear. "Bring the sleeping creature to our ship," she ordered. "We must learn what it is." The crew worked quickly to bring the sleeping pod aboard. It was a metal container filled with freezing gas and strange chemicals. Inside, they could see a figure lying very still, covered in frost. Several hours passed before they were ready to wake up the sleeping being. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft humming of machines. Dr. Yila, ship's healer, checked all the instruments one more time. "Everything looks normal," she reported. "The creature's body seems healthy, though very cold." Captain Nira nodded. "Begin the waking process." The pod made a loud hissing sound as it opened. Thick clouds of frozen vapor poured out, making it hard to see. Slowly, the figure inside began to move. It was a male creature with black hair and features that looked different from any species they knew. His eyes opened slowly, showing confusion and fear. He tried to speak, but his voice was very weak and rough. Where am I?" whispered in a language their computers had never heard before. The translation system worked hard to understand his words. "You are safe now, Captain," Nira said gently. The computer finally managed to translate her words into something the creature could understand. "I am Captain Nira. What do you call yourself?" Creature tried to sit up, but his body was still very weak. Lee Hyan," he said with great effort. "I was on a ship. We were going to start a new home on a planet called Kepler-4 for Tubi." Dr. Yila ran her medical scanners over the creature called Lee Hyan. The results were very strange. His brain showed patterns they had never seen before, and his body gave off energy readings that made no sense at all. "What species are you?" asked Captain Nira. "Human," Lee Hyan replied, still looking confused. "From Earth. How long have I been sleeping?" The crew looked at each other with surprise. They had heard stories about humans, but most people thought they were just myths. According to old legends, humans had been a very advanced race that had disappeared long ago. "You have been sleeping for over 3 centuries, Captain Nira told him gently. Lee Hyan's eyes grew wide with shock. 300 years? But that means ... What happened to the colony? What happened to my people? We do not know, Nira admitted. We found your ship floating alone in space. You were the only one still alive. Lee Hyan looked very sad at this news. He tried to stand up, but his legs were too weak. Dr. Yila quickly helped him lie back down. Rest now, she said kindly. Your body needs time to recover from the long sleep. As the days passed, Lee Hyan slowly grew stronger. He was very polite and grateful for their help. He asked many questions about their civilization and seemed amazed by their peaceful ways. The Volani crew found him fascinating. He told them stories about Earth and human culture that were very different from anything they knew. He spoke of great cities, amazing technology, humans who had traveled to many different worlds. But there were strange things about Lee Hyan that the crew began to notice. Sometimes he would look at their machines and seem to understand how they worked, even though he had never seen such technology before. When he spoke about human history, he mentioned events that had happened on many different planets at the same time, which seemed impossible. Dr. Yila continued to study his medical readings. The energy patterns in his body were unlike anything she had ever seen. His brain activity showed that he was much more intelligent than he appeared to be. "There is something unusual about this human," she told Captain Nira privately. "His body contains energy sources that I cannot identify. It is as if he has abilities that are hidden." Captain Nira watched Li Heian carefully. He seemed harmless enough, sitting quietly in the medical bay, learning their language and asking gentle questions about their world. But she could not shake the feeling that there was much more to him than what they could see. "Keep monitoring him," she ordered, "and be ready for anything." None of them realized that they had just awakened something that would change their understanding of the universe forever. Li Heian himself did not yet know what he truly was, but deep in his sleeping mind, ancient memories were beginning to stir. The peaceful crew of the Harmony's Edge had made the discovery that would soon reveal the most dangerous secret in the galaxy. 2 weeks had passed since Li Heian woke up from his long sleep. The crew of the Harmony's Edge had grown used to having him around. He was always polite and seemed very interested in learning about their way of life. He asked many questions about their peaceful civilization and listened carefully to their answers. Li Heian spent most of his time in the common areas of the ship, talking with different crew members. He was especially curious about their technology and how their society worked without any wars or conflicts. The Villani found his questions refreshing, because most species they met were not so interested in peace. But strange things started to happen, small things that made the crew feel uneasy. The first incident happened when they were traveling through a difficult part of space. The ship's navigation computer suddenly stopped working properly. Red warning lights flashed all over the control panels, and alarms began to sound. "The quantum navigation matrix is failing," shouted Engineer Kesh, his purple skin turning darker. With worry, "If we cannot fix this quickly, we will be lost in hyperspace." The crew worked frantically to solve the problem. They had been trying to repair the system for almost an hour when Li Heian walked onto the bridge. He looked at the flashing screens for only a few seconds. "Have you tried rerouting the quantum matrix through the tertiary buffer?" he asked in a casual voice, as if he was asking about the weather. Kesh stopped what he was doing and stared at the human. "What did you say?" "The tertiary buffer," Li Heian repeated. "It should stabilize the quantum flow and restore normal navigation." Kesh quickly made the changes that Li Heian had suggested. Immediately, the alarm stopped and the navigation system came back online. The engineer looked at Li Heian with complete confusion. "How did you know to do that?" Kesh asked. "You have never seen Villani technology before? Our quantum systems are completely different from anything humans ever built." Li Heian looked surprised by his own suggestion. He stared at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. I am not sure. When I looked at your screens, the solution just seemed obvious to me." "That is impossible," whispered Dr. Eula. "Our technology is based on bioquantum principles that take years to understand." But Li Heian just shrugged and walked away, leaving the crew to wonder how he had known what to do. A few days later, they were having what the Villani called a knowledge-sharing session. It was a time when crew members would talk about their cultures and histories. Li Heian was telling them about human civilization when he said something that made everyone stop and listen. "The Terran colonial wars were probably our biggest military success," he said, while looking at a star chart on the wall. "We fought on 17 different fronts across 12 different star systems. The whole thing was finished in just 6 months. The room became very quiet. Navigator Yila looked at her fellow crew members with worry in her large eyes. "Did you say 17 fronts across 12 systems?" she asked carefully. "Yes," Li Heian replied. "It was a massive operation. We had to coordinate attacks and defenses across huge distances, but our communication systems were advanced enough to make it work." The Villani crew exchanged worried glances. Their historical records did show conflicts in those systems during that time period, but they had always believed they were separate wars that happened to occur at the same time. The idea that one species could coordinate military actions across such vast distances was terrifying. "How is that possible?" asked Captain Nira. "Systems." Li Heian looked confused by their reaction. We had instantaneous communication networks. Every human colony was connected in real time. Did other species not have this technology? The crew realized that humans had been far more advanced than they had ever imagined. But the most shocking incident was still to come. 3 days later, while they were traveling through a quiet sector of space, 6 pirate ships suddenly appeared around them. The pirates were from a species called the Krath, known for their violence and greed. "This is Captain Vex of the Krath." Raiders came a harsh voice over the communication system. "Surrender your research data and valuable cargo, or we will destroy your ship." Captain Nira tried to negotiate, but the pirates were not interested in talking. They began charging their weapons, preparing to attack the peaceful research vessel. "Have no weapons systems," Dr. Yila said with fear in her voice. "We are explorers, not fighters." Li Heian, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly stood up. "May I help?" he asked politely, as if he was offering to serve tea, before anyone could answer. He walked calmly to the weapons console that the ship used only for defensive purposes. The crew watched in amazement as he placed his hands on the controls without any training or instruction. "Wait," Captain Nira called out, "you do not know how to use those systems." But Li Heian was already working. His fingers moved over the controls with impossible skill and speed. On the main screen, they could see the 6 pirate ships suddenly losing power. Their weapons shut down, their engines stopped working, and their life support systems went too. Emergency power? In less than 10 seconds, the entire pirate fleet was completely disabled. "How is that possible?" whispered Navigator Yila, her eyes wide with shock and fear. Li Heian stepped back from the console, looking at his own hands with genuine confusion. "I do not understand it either. I remember being a communications officer on my ship, not a weapons specialist. I should not know how to do any of this." The disabled pirate ships drifted helplessly in space, their crews probably wondering what had happened to them. The attack that should have destroyed the Harmony's Edge was over before it had really begun. Captain Nira looked at Li Heian with new eyes. Whatever he had been in his previous life, he was clearly much more than just a simple communications officer. The crew was beginning to realize that they had awakened something far more powerful and dangerous than they had ever imagined, as the Harmony's Edge traveled deeper into Villani space. Li Heian began to remember more about his past. The memories came back slowly, like pieces of a broken puzzle finding their places. Each day he recalled more details about his life before the long sleep. One evening, Captain Nira found him sitting alone in the observation deck staring out at the stars. She had grown worried about him because he seemed troubled by his returning memories. "Are you feeling well?" she asked, sitting down beside him. Li Heian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different than before. There was something deeper in it, something that made Nira feel uneasy. "I have been remembering things," he said slowly. "Things about Earth and my people that I had forgotten." "What kind of things?" "Earth was not just one planet with some colonies," Li Heian explained. "It was the center of something much bigger. We had settlements on thousands of worlds. Our civilization stretched across entire sectors of the galaxy." Nira felt a chill run down her spine. The historical records she knew only mentioned humans as a minor species that had disappeared long ago. But Li Heian was describing something much more vast and powerful. "How is that possible?" she asked. "Our records show humans as a small civilization that barely left their home system." Li Heian smiled sadly. "Your records are wrong. We were everywhere. We had technologies that other species could not understand. We were working on something called the Transcendence Project." "What was that?" Something in Nira's ancient cultural memory made her afraid of the answer. Her people had old stories, legends about dangerous beings from long ago. She had always thought they were just myths. "Transcendence was our attempt to evolve beyond physical limitations," Li Heian said. "We learned to touch the fabric of space and time itself. We could influence matter and energy with our minds alone. That sounds like magic, not science." Other species, it probably seemed like magic. But to us, it was just the next step in evolution. We were becoming something more than just biological creatures. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by loud alarms throughout the ship. "Red. Warning lights flashed everywhere, and the crew began running to their stations. "Captain, to the bridge immediately," came Kesh's voice over the communication system. "We have a major emergency." Nira and Lee Hyun quickly made their way to the bridge. What they saw on the main screen made Nira's blood run cold. A massive black hole had appeared directly in front of them, but it was not a natural one. It was growing rapidly, pulling everything around it into its deadly center. "It is a gravitational anomaly," shouted Dr. Yila over the noise of the alarms. "It appeared from nowhere, and it is expanding quickly." Engineer Kesh was working frantically at his station. 3 star systems are in its path. Billions of people will die if we cannot stop it." "Can we outrun it?" asked Captain Nira. "No," Kesh replied. "It is growing too fast. We need to evacuate the entire sector immediately. Even if we could warn everyone in time, there are not enough ships to evacuate 3 entire star systems," Dr. Yila said with despair in her voice. The crew looked at each other with helpless fear. They were facing a disaster that could kill billions of innocent people, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Lee Hyun stood up slowly from his chair. His expression had changed completely. The confused, gentle human they had come to know was gone. In his place was someone who looked calm and distant, as if he was seeing things they could not understand. "No," he said quietly. "Evacuation is not necessary." "What do you mean?" asked Captain Nira. "We have to do something." "We do," Lee Hyun agreed. "But not evacuation." He walked to the center of the bridge and closed his eyes. The crew watched, in growing horror, as the air around him began to shimmer and bend. The metal floor beneath his feet started to glow with strange light. "What is he doing?" whispered Navigator Yila. The space around the ship began to twist and change in ways that hurt to look at. The stars outside seemed to bend and stretch. The massive gravitational anomaly that had been pulling 3 star systems toward destruction suddenly stopped growing, then impossibly. It began to shrink. The crew could only watch in terror and amazement as Lee Hyun somehow reached out with his mind and touched the very fabric of space itself. The anomaly that should have required the combined resources of entire civilizations to address simply unraveled, like a knot being untied. In less than a minute, the deadly space-time distortion was completely gone. The 3 star systems were safe, and billions of lives had been saved. Lee Hyun opened his eyes and smiled gently at the crew. "There," he said in a normal voice. "That should stabilize the local space-time matrix." The bridge was completely silent. Everyone was staring at him with expressions of shock and fear. Captain Nira's hands were shaking as she realized what they had just witnessed. "What are you?" she whispered. Lee Hyun looked at her with eyes that now held depths she had never seen. Before, there was sadness in them, and something else that made her want to run away. "I am beginning to remember," he said quietly. "I remember what I was before the long sleep. I remember what my people became." "What was that?" "We became gods," he said simply. "And that is why we had to be destroyed." The crew of the Asterisk Harmonies, Edge Asterisk, realized that they had not rescued a helpless survivor. It awakened something that could reshape reality itself with a single thought. The question now was what Lee Hyun would do with that terrible power. After Lee Hyun had stopped the space disaster, Captain Nira could not sleep. She spent hours in the ship's data archives, searching through old records and historical files. She wanted to understand what Lee Hyun really was and where his incredible powers came from. What she found in the ancient databases made her blood run cold. She called Lee Hyun to her private office the next morning. When he arrived, she noticed that he looked different. His eyes held a depth that had not been there before, as if he could see things that others could not. "I have been researching," she said carefully. "I found old records about something called the Founders. Do you know who they were?" "Ain't." Lee Hyun sat down slowly, his expression becoming very serious. "Yes," he said quietly. "I remember them now. But what you have been taught about the Founders is not true." "What do you mean?" "The Villani and all other species in this galaxy believe the Founders were wise. Ancient beings who helped create your peaceful civilization," Lee Hyun explained. "But that is a lie they told to make themselves feel better about what they did. felt fear growing in her stomach. What did they really do? They were the survivors of a war, Lee Hyun said, his voice heavy with sadness. A war against my people. A war against humanity. That is impossible. The historical records show that humans were a small, peaceful species that disappeared naturally. Lee Hyun shook his head. The records were changed. The truth was too terrible to remember, so they created a new story. The founders were not our teachers or guides, they were our enemies. Nira pulled up star charts on her computer screen. Show me, she said. Lee Hyun stood up and walked to the display. He pointed to several areas of space that looked strange and empty. Do you see these nebulae? He asked. Your scientists think they are natural formations, but they are not. They are scars. They are the remains of weapons that were used to destroy my people. What kind of weapons could create such massive formations? Weapons that could tear apart the very fabric of space and time, Lee Hyun said sadly. The founders used reality-warping bombs that destroyed entire star systems. They sacrificed billions of their own people just to stop us. Nira looked at the star charts with new understanding. The strange, twisted nebulae that had puzzled scientists for centuries were actually the remains of an ancient war. A war so terrible that it had left permanent scars on space itself. Why did they fight you? She asked. Lee Hyun sat back down and looked at his hands. Because we had become something they could not control. My species had transcended normal physical limitations. It could manipulate matter at the quantum level, bend space and time, influence the development of entire star systems. That sounds like the abilities of gods. That is exactly what we had become, Lee Hyun said quietly. We had evolved beyond being just biological creatures. We could reshape reality according to our will. Nira felt a chill run through her body, and that scared them, terrified them. Imagine living in a galaxy where another species could change the laws of physics with a thought, where they could move your planet to a different star system, or change the chemical composition of your sun, or alter the flow of time itself. But surely your people were not evil? No, we were not evil, Lee Hyun agreed. But we were ... overwhelming. When you have the power to reshape reality, it is very easy to think that you know what is best for everyone. We would solve problems by changing the fundamental nature of things, without asking if others wanted those changes. As they talked, Lee Hyun's memories continued to return. He remembered more about his true identity and purpose. I was not just a communications officer, he said suddenly. That was a false memory implanted to protect me during my long sleep. I was actually a custodian. What is a custodian? When my people realized that the other species in the galaxy were forming an alliance against us, they prepared for the worst. Custodians were specially selected humans who were hidden away in secret locations. If humanity was ever destroyed, we were supposed to wake up and restore our civilization. So you were like a backup copy of your entire species. In a way, yes. I carry within me the genetic codes, the memories, and the technological knowledge of my people. I have the power to bring back the human civilization that was destroyed. The crew had gathered outside Captain Nira's office, and they could hear parts of the conversation. They looked at each other with growing fear as they realized what Lee Hyun truly was. Dr. Eula watched through the window as Lee Hyun demonstrated his abilities. Without touching anything, he interfaced directly with the ship's computer systems. She could see data flowing through the air around him, as if he was connected to the ship's electronic brain. He can see the quantum structure of matter, she whispered to Engineer Kesh. He can predict how stars will behave, and he can control our technology without even touching it. What have we done? Kesh asked in horror. We have awakened something that could destroy us all. Back in the office, Lee Hyun continued to explain the terrible truth about humanity's fate. The reason the founders eliminated us was not because we were evil, he said. It was because we had become too powerful for the galaxy to contain. We were reshaping reality according to our will, and that terrified everyone else. He looked at Captain Nira with eyes that now held the weight of cosmic understanding, and they were right to be afraid. What will you do now?
Nira.
voice barely above a whisper. I have a choice to make, Leanne said quietly. I can restore my people and take back what was ours, or I can let the past stay buried. The crew of the Harmony's Edge waited in terror, knowing that the fate of the entire galaxy might depend on the decision of the godlike being they had accidentally awakened. Li Yan stood alone in the observation deck of the Harmony's Edge, looking out at the millions of stars that filled the darkness of space. But now he could see so much more than just points of light. His returned memories had brought back abilities that let him perceive the hidden structure of reality itself. Could see the quantum foam that existed beneath all matter, the invisible threads that connected every atom in the universe. He could sense the gravitational waves that rippled through space-time, and feel the energy flows that powered distant suns. Most importantly, he could feel the presence of his people scattered across the galaxy. The human artifacts were still there, hidden on dead worlds and floating in empty space. Ancient technologies waited in secret vaults, ready to be awakened by the right command. And somewhere in higher dimensions beyond normal space and time, the consciousness of his destroyed people still existed. The founders had thought they had completely eliminated humanity, but they had been wrong. Cannot truly destroy beings who have learned to exist beyond physical form. The human minds had simply been scattered across dimensions that other species could not perceive. With a single thought, Li Hong could call them all back. He heard soft footsteps behind him and turned to see Captain Nira approaching carefully. She had been avoiding him since he had revealed the truth about his nature, but now she looked determined to face whatever was coming. What will you do? She asked, her voice quiet but steady. Li Han smiled sadly. I could bring them back, you. No, all of them. Every human who ever lived. How is that possible? I thought they were all destroyed. The founders believed they had one, but they did not understand what we had become. When you transcend physical limitations, death becomes just another barrier to overcome. My people are not truly gone. They are waiting in spaces between dimensions, in the quantum foam that underlies reality. Nira felt her heart racing. You could recall them?
Yes.
I could restore our technology, rebuild our civilization, and take back everything that was. Ours, the galaxy would bow to human will once again. You said could. That suggests you might not do it. Li Han gestured toward the stars visible through the observation window. Look at what this galaxy has become without us. The Villani create art from living light that dances through space. The Kethmori compose symphonies using gravitational waves that can be heard across entire star systems. The Zerathine have built cities that exist in 7 dimensions at the same time. I do not understand. All of this beauty, this diversity, this cooperation between different species, it exists because we are not here to control it. When humans ruled the galaxy, we made everything efficient and ordered. But we also made it smaller and less wonderful. Nira looked out at the stars, trying to imagine what the galaxy had been like when humans controlled it. What would happen if you brought your people back? We would solve all the problems, Li Han said. We would eliminate disease and conflicts, make sure everyone had enough food and shelter. We would make the galaxy perfect according to human understanding. It sounds like a good thing, does it? It would also eliminate the chaos that creates new ideas. We would end the struggles that help species grow stronger. We would remove the differences between cultures that make life interesting. Everything would be ordered according to human logic and human will. Li Hun was quiet for a long moment, and Nira could see the terrible weight of decision in his eyes. We could not help ourselves, he continued. When you have the power to reshape reality, it is very easy to think you know what is best for everyone. We would fix problems by changing the fundamental nature of things, without asking if others wanted those changes. So you're saying your people were not evil, but they were ... overwhelming. We meant well, but we could not let others make their own choices. We would see a species struggling with some challenge and immediately solve it for them. We would see a world with problems and reshape it to be perfect. But in doing so, we took away the freedom for others to find their own solutions. For long minutes, Li Han stood in silence, holding the power to resurrect his entire civilization. The crew of the Harmony's Edge watched from the doorway, afraid to interrupt but unable to look away. Finally, Li Hun placed his hand on the wall of the ship. Immediately, the metal began to glow with strange light as he interfaced with the ship's quantum structure. "I choose to remain," he said quietly, "but not as what I was." The crew watched in amazement as Li Hun began to change himself. Using his godlike abilities, he deliberately limited his own consciousness. He imposed restrictions on his powers while keeping enough strength to help when it was truly needed. The being who could reshape reality with a thought became simply a skilled human with unusual abilities. He was still powerful, but no longer overwhelming. "I will travel with you," he told Captain Nira. "I will help where I can and protect what needs protecting, but I will not restore what was lost. Some powers are too great for any species to have, even mine." As the Harmony's Edge prepared to jump to hyperspace, carrying its strange new crew member toward unknown adventures, Li Hun felt the presence of other sleeping human custodians scattered across the galaxy. There were dozens of them, hidden in secret locations, waiting to be awakened. He left them sleeping instead. He chose to let the galaxy continue on its beautiful, chaotic, diverse path forward. The age of human dominance was over, but perhaps the age of human wisdom was just beginning. The stars looked the same through the observation window, but everything had changed. The galaxy was safe from the return of its former masters, and Li Hun had chosen to become something new, not a god, but a guardian. As the ship jumped into hyperspace, carrying them toward their next adventure, Li Hun smiled. For the first time in centuries, he was truly free to choose his own path.